Boris Johnson has resigned as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, bringing his scandal-plagued tenure to an end after less than 3 years. Johnson also said that he would continue to serve as Prime Minister until his Conservative Party selects a new leader. Listen in.
Good afternoon. Thank you. It is clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister. And I've agreed with Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of our backbench MPs, that the process of choosing that new leader should begin now. And the timetable will be announced next week. And I've today appointed a cabinet to serve, as I will, until a new leader is in place. I want to thank you, the British public, for the immense privilege that you have given me. And I want you to know that from now on until the new Prime Minister is in place, your interests will be served and the government of the country will be carried on.
Boris Johnson was left with little choice but to step down, though he intended to stay on and fight till the last minute. But the avalanche of resignations from government ministers continued through to Thursday. Letter after letter criticised the scandal-hit leader and implored Johnson to step down. Johnson's departure marks a remarkable downfall for a Prime Minister who was once seen as having political superpowers with an appeal that transcended traditional party lines. He won a historic victory in December 2019 on the promise of delivering a Brexit deal and leading the country to a bright future, as he said, outside the European Union. Boris Johnson was perhaps the most famous politician to enter Downing Street as Prime Minister, having forged a successful career as a journalist, a novelist, a TV personality, and the London mayor in the preceding decades. But his premiership unravelled in the aftermath of the pandemic. The most immediate cause of the demise of his leadership was the fallout from the Partygate scandal. And then the Pincher scandal. Johnson has faced numerous other scandals that have hit his standing in the polls. Despite his 80-seat landslide general election victory, accusations include using donor money inappropriately to pay for a refurbishment of his own Downing Street home and ordering lawmakers to vote in such a manner that they would protect a colleague who had breached lobbying manner, and many more scandals.
Just stop there, please. Stop there, please. Stop there, please. Do it, Boris. Okay. Stop there, stop. There you go.
Right, this of course is our top focus on WION today. The UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has quit as the Conservative Party leader, but he says he will continue to serve as a Prime Minister until the party chooses his successor. Let's get you up to date with what's happened in the last 1 hour. It was expected that he will resign. Newspapers in the UK had been predicting it, and his speech was brief. But many experts say that his departure from 10 Downing will not be so swift. Let's tell you what he said, some of the statements that have made headlines. Boris Johnson says it is clearly now the will of Conservative MPs that there should be a new leader. Let's listen into some of the highlights of his speech.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you. It is clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister. And I've agreed with Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of our backbench MPs, that the process of choosing that new leader should begin now. And the timetable will be announced next week. And I've today appointed a cabinet to serve, as I will, until a new leader is in place. So I want to say to the millions of people who voted for us in 2019, many of them voting Conservative for the first time, thank you for that incredible mandate, the biggest Conservative majority since 1987, the biggest share of the vote since 1979. And the reason I have fought so hard in the last few days to continue to deliver that mandate in person was not just because I wanted to do so, but because I felt it was my job, my duty, my obligation to you to continue to do what we promised in 2019. And of course, I'm immensely proud of the achievements of this government, from getting Brexit done to settling our relations with the continent for over half a century, reclaiming the power for this country to make its own laws in Parliament, getting us all through the pandemic, delivering the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, the fastest exit from lockdown, and in the last few months, leading the West in standing up to Putin's aggression in Ukraine. And let me say now to the people of Ukraine that I know that we in the UK will continue to back your fight for freedom for as long as it takes. And at the same time, in this country, we've been pushing forward a vast programme of investment in infrastructure and skills and technology, the biggest in a century, because if I have one insight into human beings, it is that genius and talent and enthusiasm and imagination are evenly distributed throughout the population, but opportunity is not. And that's why we must keep levelling up, keep unleashing the potential of every part of the United Kingdom. And if we can do that in this country, we will be the most prosperous in Europe. And in the last few days, I've tried to persuade my colleagues that it would be eccentric to change governments when we're delivering so much, and when we have such a vast mandate, and when we're actually only a handful of points behind in the polls, even in mid-term after quite a few months of pretty relentless sledging, and when the economic scene is so difficult domestically and internationally. And I regret not to have been successful in those arguments, and of course it's painful not to be able to see through so many ideas and projects myself. But as we've seen at Westminster, the herd instinct is powerful. When the herd moves, it moves. And my friends, in politics, no one is remotely indispensable. And our brilliant and Darwinian system will produce another leader equally committed to taking this country forward through tough times, not just helping families to get through it, but changing and improving the way we do things, cutting burdens on businesses and families, and yes, cutting taxes, because that is the way to generate the growth and the income we need to pay for great public services. And to that new leader, I say, whoever he or she may be, I say I will give you as much support as I can. And to you, the British public, I know that there will be many people who are relieved, and perhaps quite a few who will also be disappointed. And I want you to know how sad I am to be giving up the best job in the world. But them's the breaks. I want to thank Carrie and our children and all members of my family who have had to put up with so much for so long. I want to thank the peerless British civil service for all the help and support that you have given our police, our emergency services, and of course our fantastic NHS, who at critical moment helped to extend my own period in office, as well as our armed services and our agencies that are so admired around the world, and our indefatigable Conservative Party members and supporters, whose selfless campaigning makes our democracy possible. I want to thank the wonderful staff here at Chequers, here at Number 10, and of course at Chequers, and our fantastic prop force detectives, the one group, by the way, who never leak. Above all, I want to thank you, the British public, for the immense privilege that you have given me. And I want you to know that from now on, until the new Prime Minister is in place, your interests will be served and the government of the country will be carried on. Being Prime Minister is an education in itself. I've travelled to every part of the United Kingdom, and in addition to the beauty of our natural world, I've found so many people possessed of such boundless British originality and so willing to tackle old problems in new ways that I know that even if things can sometimes seem dark now, our future together is golden. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Now, for more on this, we are being joined by Dr. Hamid Khan from Manchester. He's a journalist and strategic affairs expert. Dr. Khan, thanks for joining us. The scandal-hit UK Prime Minister has resigned. He leaves plenty of crises in his wake. Rising costs of living for the people of UK and inflation, of course. What lies ahead for the United Kingdom?
Thank you very much, Priyanka. Yes, you're right that there are a lot of challenges for the upcoming Prime Minister, and that's why, the opposition Labour chairman, Sir Keir Starmer, have called for the new election as well. He said that this is the better way, that there should be a fresh mandate for the new government. But it looks like that the Tories would not accept it, and they will go for the procedural change in party leadership, which will lead to the new Prime Minister. And as you were saying, and as we can see that there was a long battle going on by Prime Minister Boris Johnson before stepping down, that he survived Partygate scandal, then he survived, other scandals, till the Pincher scandal as well. So, I mean, he was resisting a lot to given up on premiership. But eventually the party pressure, eventually there's so many resignations and demand by his own party member of parliament reached to his resignation. And I believe that there are a lot of challenges, especially in terms of taxes, in terms of prices, petrol prices and other things. And there are so many legislation in the process which they have to deal with in coming months and weeks. And as you know that because of the summer, they have to wait.
Right. Dr. Khan, he was, of course, a very popular leader, but now that we're seeing reactions trickling in since his resignation, a majority of Londoners are relieved that Johnson has quit. What are their options as of now?
Definitely, Priyanka. The thing is, since this Partygate scandal, he lost his popularity because, in Britain, morality and ethics are the most important thing. And people of Britain think that if a prime minister is telling us not to go in parties and avoid and follow all the COVID restrictions, and he was enjoying himself in the 10 Downing Street, it has raised a lot of questions in the morality of the Prime Minister. And then he defended this latest sex scandal by the Pincher. So it was, the public was not supporting him anymore. And that's what we have seen. I mean, if if his closest ministers like Rishi Sunak, Sajid Javid, Liz Truss, if they cannot have trust on him anymore, then what left for to be the Prime Minister?
Right. Dr. Khan, thanks so much for all those insights. We'll continue to track this story. Thanks for joining us on WION World is One.
My pleasure.
Now, Boris Johnson has resigned as Britain's Prime Minister, but who will replace him? That, of course, is a big question coming up. As the leader of the Conservative Party, what's next? The problem with the Conservatives is the lack of a potential successor. There are several options, but none of them measure up. The first one is Rishi Sunak, UK's former Chancellor of the Exchequer. He has often been seen as the heir in waiting. But Sunak's popularity has plunged after a series of controversies. He is weighed down by policy blunders and his own scandals, and was also fined for attending Johnson's birthday party. The second is Liz Truss. The Foreign Secretary is the darling of the ruling Conservative Party's grassroots. She has regularly toppled polls of party members. Truss has a carefully cultivated public image. The 46-year-old initially campaigned against Brexit, but after the referendum, she changed her mind. However, Truss lacks voter appeal. Some Conservatives even doubt her ability to keep them in Parliament. The third is Ben Wallace. The 52-year-old has taken over Truss to become the most popular government member among the Tories, and this is due to his handling of the Ukraine crisis. The former soldier began his political career as a member of Scotland's devolved assembly in May 1999, before being first elected to the Westminster Parliament in 2005. He also supported remaining in the European Union ahead of the referendum. And another front-runner is former Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt. The 55-year-old finished second to Johnson in the 2019 leadership contest. Earlier this year, he said his ambition to become Prime Minister has not completely vanished. Last month, Hunt said that he had voted to oust Johnson in a confidence vote. The other options include the likes of Sajid Javid and Nadeem Zahawi, but they are not mainstream leaders or even credible alternatives. This makes replacing Boris Johnson even more difficult. With Europe at war, the UK does not want a vacuum in the country's leadership amid this crisis.
Because we do not know how long immunity lasts, advises that we should offer the vaccine to all 17-year-olds who are...
Meanwhile, a large population of London has already reacted to the resignation with a sigh of relief. Rights workers, government employees, lawyers and even students, all of them had to say the same thing about Boris Johnson's resignation: about time.
About time, isn't it? Seriously. I mean, have you ever known anybody be so arrogant, ignorant, delusional? You know, the list goes on. I mean, it's interesting to see the people who've now found their integrity. You know, where was their integrity months ago? You know, it'll be interesting to see who now stands for leader of the Conservative Party now. Let's hope it's somebody that had their integrity a few months ago and not so recently.
You know, this is what happens when you've got a Prime Minister that has got no scruples. You know, lies after lies. How can you actually trust anyone, you know, especially in that position of trust? For me, I think he's betrayed the country, you know, and if there is no trust, you know, in a person in that position, then he has to go straight away, and he should have gone a long time ago.
So to have over 50 ministers giving a letter of resignation to Boris just shows the lack of confidence he has within the party. So in my eyes, it was needed. I mean, there's been so many scandals, Partygate, the handling of the COVID crisis. This is now the right time, I'd say. To be honest, the country has been in turmoil for many months with Boris and his handling of many issues. So looking hopefully forward to some brighter times ahead.
I'm really not that interested. It will be it will be somebody that isn't going to do a great job, and we need to wait for an election and change that. It's not necessarily Labour, but somebody other than the Conservatives. Yeah.
The resignation comes a couple of weeks before Johnson would have completed 3 years in office. He was controversial to say the least and popular. He had compared hijab-wearing Muslim women to letterboxes, referred to gay men as bum boys. These are just few examples. Our next report will get you the entire picture. Take a look.
Prime Minister, how's your week going?
Terrific, like many others.
It was a challenging week, to say the least, for the British Prime Minister. What started as claims of lying against Number 10 concluded with an end to Johnson's premiership. Boris Johnson joined the Conservative Party as a candidate in 1997. He lost his first political bid to the opposition Labour Party, but stood for the Parliament again in 2001, this time winning the bid in the Henley-on-Thames constituency. In the next 6 years, Johnson regularly appeared on the telly, made some controversial comments, had to apologise for a few as well, but led on with his political journey. Johnson was elected the Mayor of London in 2007, winning a tight race against the Labour Party led by Gordon Brown. He later served as the Foreign Secretary under Theresa May.
I have to say that the Foreign Secretary is doing an absolutely excellent job. He is, in short, an FFS, a fine Foreign Secretary.
Johnson's tenure as the Foreign Secretary also came with controversies. He found himself in a spot often, given the blunt statements made.
I use phrases and language that have caused offence. Of course, I'm sorry for the offence that I have caused, but I will continue to speak as directly as I can.
In 2019, Boris Johnson was elected leader of the Conservative Party.
Jeremy Hunt, 46,656. Boris Johnson, 92,153. And therefore I give notice that Boris Johnson is elected as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party.
And appointed the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom the next day.
I have just been to see Her Majesty the Queen, who has invited me to form a government, and I have accepted.
The first thing Johnson did on assuming charge was reopening of the Brexit negotiations, a bold promise that he made.
And yes, they will have an overwhelming mandate from this election to get Brexit done, and we will honour that mandate by January the 31st.
Amid several deadlocks, stalled conversations, protests and opposition, the UK left the EU on the 31st of January 2020. The Tories made promises of an independent British economy, but as fate would have it, The tall claims were dampened by the COVID-19 pandemic.
The time has now come for us all to do more. From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
While the government's quick rollout of COVID-19 vaccine buoyed the Johnson administration, his lockdown party sank the public's trust in number 10. Johnson has faced months of damaging revelations of parties held at his office in defiance of the COVID-19 lockdowns. The leaked images and videos started propping up in the media at the beginning of this year.
There was a brief gathering in the Cabinet room shortly after 2 p.m, lasting for less than 10 minutes, during which people I work with kindly passed on their good wishes. And I have to say, in all frankness, at that time, it did not occur to me that this might have been a breach of the rules.
Johnson had his justifications, but they could not build back the trust of the public. Partygate was just the start of a series of scandals that would follow. 2 Tory MPs were forced to quit from their seats following sexual misconduct claims. The party failed to save the seat in a by-poll held last month. The final nail in the coffin was the Pincher scandal. The former Tory whip stepped down following claims of sexual misconduct. Chris Pincher had a history of such inappropriate behaviour, which was conveniently ignored by Johnson while electing Pincher as the party whip. The Tory government fell like a pack of cards. Those who have resigned say that the government has lost integrity, that there needs to be some accountability, and that Johnson cannot let his personal political ambitions override his duty as the Prime Minister. Now, with history as witness, Johnson has a tainted political legacy and no office to hold on to. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.